Good morning, everybody. Does it feel like this week is going by like super slow? I don't know. It feels like Friday already for me. Anyway, here we are. And today we're going to talk about some pretty serious topics because the country is now enveloped in tornadoes and people are going to need to rebuild. The problem is there is not a lot of lumber, and if there is any left, it is priced through the roof, making it impossible for many people to rebuild. And there's other things going on. The mass exodus of freedom-loving Americans has begun, and they're moving out of the cities. Now, if you're watching the mainstream news, you don't know about this because they're downplaying it. They don't want to talk about that. But the people that are moving out of the cities have been met with the inability to build anything because the lumber prices have almost tripled. And in some places, the price gouging is out of control. Now, this feels very deliberate. It feels intentional. They're caging us into our living situations despite the need and desire to change that living situation. Now, as many of you know, I had a dream about tornadoes as far as the eye can see, and this was just before a rash of tornadoes broke out over the Midwest. And what is going to happen when these people want to rebuild their houses? They're not going to be able to. They're going to be forced into renting or other situations. So let's talk a little bit about why people are fleeing the big cities and leaving for conservative states. Well, it's because people are starting to wake up. Because with a single spamdemic, they saw their rights eroded before their eyes. Forced vaccinations on their children. Mandates that interfere with their ability to breathe or their right to natural immunity. They saw the forced closures of their small businesses that they worked so hard to build, and they saw all of their savings evaporate after the promise of only a 2-week shutdown to flatten the curve. So, it is important to revisit how much people have lost, who paid a huge price for a death rate far below 1%. So, of course, people who disagree with what is happening to our world in America, they're moving into these places where they feel safer. It's natural. Or at least the majority of the people around them feel the same way they do. And I believe people are waking up to the fact that governors are not always going to have their best interests at heart, but at least they're surrounded by people who feel the same way. Now, when the powers that be declared WAR on the spamdemic, what they were really doing was going to WAR with your freedoms. Americans saw themselves portrayed in the media as right-wing nuts, extremists. And now, here's the latest, and this is just laughable. They're trying to assert that they were funded by China. The PBs saw a wave of contributions from Chinese diaspora before the Capitol attack. And I'm saying the word Chinese differently, not to make fun of Chinese people, but you're not allowed to talk about that country without getting YouTube all over you. So this is the new, most ridiculous assertion I've ever heard before. And I think people are starting to realize that they've been sold out by Dump, who made the V scene at warp speed because he gave the excuse that it was going to help him get reelected. But let's read a little bit through this article here. The donations started coming in around 10 p.m. on the 17th. A donor named Li Zhang gave 100. A few minutes later, someone named Zhun Li donated 100. Then Haozu gave $20. Following shortly by Xingpei. In all, almost 1,000 people with Chinese surnames gave 86 grand. Now, this article alone is very racist. Just because someone has a surname, you're going to assume they're a certain race? Shame on you, Yahoo, or whoever put this article. This is USA Today coming through the Yahoo portal. Now, we know from experience that sometimes they load up these last names to send a message. We saw this with the flight in San Francisco when the local news covered that. They said that the pilots were named Wee Too Low and Bing Dang Ow. And obviously that's ridiculous because that wasn't their name. And they said that they got this information from official sources. And then they wonder why we don't trust the media. Now, that wasn't a joke. It was real. Look it up. Bing Dang Ow. It's right here on YouTube. We'll play the clip every once in a while because that is a pivotal moment in exposing the media. That they just make stuff up. So let's look at these last names and see if that makes any sense. Lai Zhang. Let's see what this one is. Zhen Li. How's you going to pay? I'll let you guys have fun with that one. We're not going to spend too much time on that. But the assertion is just unreal. To just assume because of somebody's last name that they were somehow funded by the Chinese, this is just unbelievable. So, what is going on with everything? Well, many people on the right are now feeling caged. Nowhere to go because they trusted their leader. And now building costs are through the roof, and they have been since 2020. So you can't even really blame this on Bo Jiden. They're both at fault. They're both part of the agenda. They don't want you building. Because if they did want you building, if you had a great right-leaning leader, he would have anticipated this and passed some executive orders to get people in the lumber mills back to work so that you could continue to build and not pay through the roof for lumber prices. Don't you think that's pretty important to keep the economy going, to keep people building? That's 101. Talk about infrastructure. This is the infrastructure. And now what we have is an inflated housing market. We'll get into that. Despite a spamdemic that should have decimated the economy, and all of a sudden our economy is thriving. How can this be? We'll get into that a little bit later in the show. But wouldn't a great leader have done something to ensure that their followers could build their way out of their situation? Especially if they're living in a left-leaning state? Wouldn't your leader make a way out? I'm trying to get you to wake up, to understand that both sides are working together for an agenda. Because if they weren't, we wouldn't be having this crisis. This crisis is a lot more serious than the border crisis. Because if you can't build, you're done. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just use the wood on your own land and build your own house or build a log cabin? Well, they're what are called mobile mills. And we're going to get into why you can't even get your hands on any of those because there's a labor shortage. Nobody's working because they're getting free money from the stimulus. Do you see all the unintended consequences of just giving out free money? It really hurts the people down here in the bottom, you and me. When you need to go, your house burns down and you got to replace your house. Or you get hit with a tornado or a flood. We know they control the weather. Why is it all the places that are right-leaning are the ones that suffer a lot of these quote-unquote natural disasters? Now they can't even rebuild. You know, where is this new YouTube and this new Twitter website we were supposed to have? It was supposed to, that he could have helped win the election in a landslide. So there was no question. So it wouldn't even be close. Never happened. Now they're talking about it, but is it ever going to happen? I don't know. So I was sitting around thinking about why wood cost so much, and then one of you gave me some clues. Now there's a video or videos that some people took of warehouses full of wood just sitting there and trains with miles and miles of wood on them. So I started following up on some of these leads, and sure enough, it appears as though there is a labor shortage. This is fueled by the free money given out by the government in form of stimulus checks and unemployment benefits, extended unemployment benefits. Now, eventually, those unemployment benefits will run out. But a person making $14 an hour, which is about what they pay the people that cut the wood, they will then go back to work, and the lumber prices should come back down. But can you believe it? There's nobody to cut the wood. Now, that's only one of many problems. There's also the large corporations that are stockpiling the wood. Let's read some of these articles and try to get down to the bottom of this. I got two of these pulled up. This is Farm Journal. Labor shortage, wet weather cause lumber prices to surge almost 400%. As shoppers face sticker shock when buying lumber. This is dated May 3rd, 2021. Prices continue to climb. Lumber prices up 359% since last year at this time, with a 69% increase taking place since the start of 2021. But the higher prices aren't trickling down to the producers. Unfortunately not. If you look at it from the stumpage and delivery, prices are very hyper-local. Timber Mart South is a timber price reporting service that covers pricing from eastern Texas to the southeast. If you look at it from the south-wide level, your stumpage prices are up 2.5% over last year. Look at these lumber prices, you guys. Who would have ever thought? Through the roof. So it says, with a hyper-local market, as you move further south to southern Georgia, producers there are seeing stumpage prices up 12%. The increase is still a far cry from the 400% surge in lumber prices, a scenario that's leaving even industry insiders stumped. That's a good question. Let's go back down here. When asked why lumber prices are skyrocketing, I think that'll be in the economics books in the future. There's a lot of market stuff that's going on right now. Inventories were tight leading into CV19, but he says there's still a lot of wood available today. So if we have all this wood, what's the problem? There's a lot of timber on the stock. Inventory growth to dry, says Smith. We're good at doing what we do in the South. We are growing more than we're harvesting on an annual basis. It's a complex issue that boils down to one economic principle. From a broad perspective, it's fairly simple. As with other commodities, it's supply and demand. Well, there's a lot of standing trees. He says there's an issue is getting that product processed. We have an ample supply of standing trees, but that doesn't necessarily correlate with an ample supply of lumber. Boils down to three different bottlenecks. And it all starts with a labor shortage. There's an undersupply of labor at all levels of the industry, whether it's logging, mills, or truckers, says Merker. Okay, so if you're the president, what do you do if you see this happening? You get labor to these places. You incentivize. You give a tax rebate for people who work in this industry. You increase wages in the industry somehow. You subsidize. Don't we subsidize milk still and eggs or something like that? And cheeses? We subsidize certain products to prop up those farmers. Why not subsidize the paper industry to give people the ability to build? If there's plenty of wood, not enough labor, there's a million ways as a president you can incentivize people to loosen up this bottleneck. I spoke with a mill operator recently who said he hired 5 people, and he said one person showed up for work and they worked for 2 days. So that's a big issue. So guess what? If you're looking for a job, get out your chainsaw and start practicing. I mean, I know there's a lot more to it than that, but if you're looking for work, it looks like they're having a shortage of labor. And this would be a great long-term job. You could probably work your way up and become a foreman or something, not have to do as much of the harder work, and probably make some pretty good money doing this, I would assume. Merker says the wet weather in the southeast this winter also puts a damper on the harvest. That makes it difficult for loggers. They have to follow best management practices, so they can't just run up the property and contribute mud to the waterways and so forth. And then they have byproducts. Millers can't get rid of sawdust and chips. Heck, send some to me. I spoke with one of the mill operators. He said he's operating about 80% mill capacity because of these obstacles he's facing right now. Heck, give the chips away. There's a million people who'd want sawdust and chips to put on their property. You just have to advertise. People probably come pick it up by the truckloads. So, we're now getting down to the problem. Here's another local story. I like to do these local stories because you get more of the truth. This is 58, channel 58, April 23rd. So this is a little bit older article. Wisconsin, if you're in the market for a new home, expect to pay $25,000. What? More because of the lumber price. CV is partly to blame. Well, yeah, because of the stimulus checks. People don't want to work. But a lack of workers and increased prices of everything from lumber to copper are causing compounding problems. We called this, go look back on this channel, an entire year ago, probably a little longer. We were talking about how copper was going to go through the roof. The second that T-Man signed the 5G Whiz and beyond, and we knew that a lot of copper was going to be needed for that infrastructure, we knew that the prices of copper were going to go up, and they've doubled since that time. Now, I don't recommend people to, I don't go into the stock market. I don't play the stock market. To me, it's the B system. So I don't. But some people came into the comments and said that they doubled their money after listening to what we were looking at and decoding all of this. So anyway, so let's go on with this. So basically, building costs across the board have gone up. Some of you chimed into the comment section yesterday. You talked about how all building supplies have gone through the roof, including this copper wiring, toilets, PVC, water heaters. The shortage has been building for years. Customers are now waiting longer for us to get there. Prices are now elevated. Every week I have to raise prices because every time I get a price from a mill, it's up. Sheds would be full of wood waiting to be turned into cabinets. Instead, they're only 60% full. The supply lines, they're just messing up from the mill level, loggers, kiln facilities, everything. He's struggling to find workers too. The Milwaukee area Technical College is still churning out grads, but fewer of them. The numbers that were allowed in our classrooms in order to stay in line with the standards decreased. So they don't have enough people graduating to fill these roles because the schools were ordered to social distance. The numbers would rebound as in this. He said their numbers will rebound as the spam-demic recedes, but he said more students need to be introduced to the trades earlier to solve long-term worker shortages. Some of that is the new trending careers, some of that is the gig economy. Lumber prices set a record high this week, $1.33 per board foot, which is 4 times higher than a year ago. Now, if you didn't know by now, the federal government has been propping up the economy now for over a year, during the duration of this spamdemic, with expanded tax credits, unemployment benefits, stimulus checks. And right now, it just doesn't make sense for some people to work. And that is until the supply and demand catches up. In other words, the market has a strange way of adjusting itself. Things have and will continue to go up in price. You guys have already seen it in the grocery store, because demand has gone up because of all this free money. And so, this is economics 101. Why isn't the mainstream talking about this? Why aren't they talking about the drastic inflation as a result of these stimulus checks? And how is the economy continuing to hold and even thrive despite every indication that it shouldn't be? You guys remember what happened after Blind 11? There was a recession. What was it? How long was that recession? Was it like 7 years or something? Look at this. Critics slam the Fed as home prices rise at a historic rate. House prices are going up. How is this possible? How are the housing prices and the market values soaring despite many people being out of work or working at 3/4 capacity because they're working from home? It's because it's being propped up. Let me make sure we're connected. We'll keep going with these stories. Thanks, everybody, for joining the show this morning. This is dated March 30th, 2021. Home prices nationally in January were up 11% year over year. As of last week, the Federal Reserve held $2.2 trillion mortgage-backed securities. They're continued on autopilot. I don't think there's any discussion within the Fed. Home prices gains are accelerating at an alarming pace, fueled by the spamdemic inflation, which some claim is not getting enough attention from the Federal Reserve. Home prices nationally rose 11.2% year over year. That's unheard of. It's the largest gain in 15 years. Now, this is good for some people who own their homes. What about people who want to rent? Your rents are going to go up right along with the home values. So, apparently the Federal Reserve is supposed to try to adjust for this rapid growth. And they're saying there's record low supply. Well, guess what? I think we just figured out why the supply is low, because they're trying to build, but a lot of what's happening is people doing updates to their houses and stuff like that. There's not a lot of new homes being built, so the supply is low. This is crazy. Cost soars for a plywood substitute. This was last year, the end of last year. It was already going up. Americans are coughing up $4,600 more on average to buy their dream home than 6 months ago, thanks to a record run-up in prices for the once cheap plywood substitute. Prices are on a tear for those bonded wood chip sheets commonly used for sheathing for walls, floors, and roofs in new home construction. Oriented strand board has been used as low-cost alternative to plywood, but the product now fetches a higher price as increased demand and tight supplies lead to delivery delays. It's difficult to get. Lead times are out. Same story as the other articles. It's really hurting builders and buyers of new houses who already suffered from surging lumber prices earlier this year. This was 2020. It's delivering windfalls to manufacturers Norbert and Weyerhaeuser. The board soared to record $729 per 1,000 square feet. So, once again. Now, How is it that gas prices are still relatively low? Now, I'm not complaining about that, but we're in the middle of a spamdemic. The rents have gone up. Employers are still hiring. Are you seeing how all this is being propped up? And eventually, we're going to have to pay the piper. Thanks, Rode, for becoming a channel member. Let's go into the chat here, see what's going on with you guys. Now, I started decoding a series called Helix, and I'm glad that you guys kept on me about that because it is full. Just the first few episodes, I captured a bunch of screenshots. We'll go over that, I think, on Friday. I'll put together a montage for you guys and probably upload that tomorrow in anticipation of the full live show that we're going to do on it. But this is just nuts. Helix. Now, it's all about these scientists. There's 120 of them up in the Arctic in this base that looks like an eyeball. It looks like an iris. Remember, we established the iris of the eye as a gate or some kind of a portal. And this goes down into lower Earth. I was talking to my mom about this because when they describe the creation of Earth in the Bible, it talks about waters receding. The waters receded up so that the dry land appeared. And I thought to myself, where did that water go? Well, originally there was no rain in the Bible in the very beginning. They said that a dew or a mist came up from the ground. So the water didn't go in the air, because if it did, it would be up there and come down as rain. Where did the water go in creation when the waters receded? I believe it went down into a lower earth or a hollow earth. And then when the flood happened, yes, it did rain 40 days and nights, but the Bible also says that water came up from the ground. And then again, the water receded after the flood back down into the ground. Some of it went up in the air, and this is where we have rain and weather. So there's something about this hollow earth, and we begin to see hints of this in the TV series Helix. Now, the interesting thing about Helix is it's full of programming. And the programming is about what we're going through right now. It's all about an outbreak that happens on this base, this Arctic base, with 120 people on it, which, by the way, is 40 and 40 and 40. And the eye is a portal. And we know that a child in the womb gestates for 40 weeks. And that the womb looks like a metaphor for the inner eyeball. And you see how all this connects together? It's the birthing in of the new virus. Now, there are many, many images in the Helix series showing the actual spike virus. Now, I know a lot of viruses share the same spike shape. Looks like a ball with spikes on it. But there are also many, many different types of virus shapes. Why were they already showing us the exact shape of the virus that we're going through right now? Of course, the series came up long before the CV-19 spamdemic. It was in 2014 is when the series came out. So I did my careful diligence and I collected all of the different clips showing and demonstrating the foreshadowing, the foreknowledge. They talk about essential personnel, all of the things we're going through right now. They talk about the DNA. It's crazy. So I can't wait to put together that montage for you guys. It'll probably be about 10 to 15 minutes long. Let's go back into the chat here. Now, we'll cover this story. This woman was out. She decided to get as far away as she could. This is ABC News. Missing for months, found alive, foraged for grass, moss to survive in Utah. 47-year-old woman. She decided she had had enough. She's like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go live with God up in the mountains. That's exactly what she did. But look what they did to her. They drug her out and took her in for a mental health evaluation before they released her. They probably forced her on some kind of medication before they would let her go. That looks like a well-constructed tent. That looked like, look, she's got everything in bags, neatly packed away. I see no signs of mental illness. Some people are just done. We don't want to live in the grid anymore because of everything that's happening around us. People are losing their minds. Look at her little setup here. She's next to, it looks like a fire pit. Under a tree, she's got rocks on here. There isn't a bunch of trash strewn around. It doesn't look like she's some, random homeless person. She's getting away. And they drug her in for mental health evaluation. And then they admit here that she wasn't even breaking the law. Guys, I've thought about doing this before. Things get crazy. You're just like, this is crazy. You got census people running around, harassing you. You can't get in your car and drive down the street without getting some kind of a ticket. You can't fish without getting some kind of a ticket. You've got landlords trying to shove you into a 12-month lease when you don't even know where you're going to be in 12 months or if you're going to have a job, but you're still financially obligated. There have been times where I've just been like, screw it, I'm going to get a tent and I take my chances. Now, it seems it's probably pretty cold up there for her, but if she was doing fine. And then the crazy thing is they flew a drone over. I got to read this. This is crazy. Poor lady's out. Can you imagine the horror? She's out there in the middle of nowhere and a drone flies over her. She just must have been like, is this a nightmare? This is the very thing she was trying to get away from. Search and rescue crews first looked for her in December after finding an abandoned car and camping equipment. Over the next several months, efforts were made to identify and contact family without success. The sheriff's office said Monday. Detectives did make contact with this woman's former coworkers, but they did not get any information that suggested where this woman might be. Well, maybe she didn't want anyone to know where she was. They did, however, find information that suggested this woman might struggle with mental health challenges. What proof do you have of that? Just because people want to get away? On Sunday, a sheriff's office sergeant and other searchers returned to Diamond Fork to look for her. When their drone crashed, the sergeant and drone pilot walked into the hills to retrieve it and came across a tent. Inside was the missing woman. Oh, gosh. And she probably screamed at them and said, "Why are you flying a drone over me when I'm out here in the middle of nowhere?" And then you know how they do. It's like a bad movie. They go, "Oh, we're here to help. You must be having mental problems because you're screaming at us." Just makes me so mad. Can't even check out of their own system in God's nature because they're control freaks. They can't stand it. So, here's where we're at. Okay, let's read some of these comments. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Yeah, you guys hit the like button. Helps the channel grow. Helps get the word out. It does something to the algorithms. So always remember to hit the like button. I don't really ask you guys to do too much on this channel. We don't have a bunch of sponsors or, I'm not selling stuff to you. I'm not asking you for money. But I do ask you to hit the thumbs up and, comment maybe in the comment section. That I guess helps to get the word out as many people as possible so they can wake up to this madness, this nightmare that we call life. And so that they can start to make choices to get out of the beast, we are the ones giving the power to the beast. You know that, right? Every time you become materialistic and you buy a bunch of things that you'll never use, or you buy something new just because the old one is outdated, every time you do that, every time you get a huge house that you don't really need, or you waste food, all the little things, you're feeding the beast. That's what you're doing. You're giving power to the beast. Every time you vote, you're giving power to the beast. Every time you give them the legitimacy of rulership over you, you are giving power to the beast. And so stories like this help you to understand that they're getting more and more power. And we have to stop. We have to become independent from the beast. How do you do that? You don't have mortgages that pay banks. You're not as materialistic. You get the things you need, not the things you want all the time. Because there's always going to be things you want. That's how you get out of the beast. That's how you take power away from the beast. You're independent. You grow some of your food if you can. You have chickens or something and you have eggs. There are a million ways to take power from the beast. You could start right now taking power away from the beast. Right now you could. Stop supporting these corporations who all they do is the more power they get, the more they manipulate you by not putting toilet paper on the shelves or by doing away with cleaning products or fearing you into buying cleaning products and taking them off the shelves. Or who are forcing you to do things to come into their business. Why are we giving power to these people? Why? For convenience? So, all right. What else do we have here? Okay. Lumber prices are ridiculous. Yes. Legal name, contracting, and consent. Yes. Yahuwah is my king. Absolutely. All right. There are many antichrists. I agree, Tam Tam. It's a spirit. It's an antichrist spirit. Yahuwah. Buy vinegar for cleaning. Heck, you can make your own vinegar. What would life be like if our day was creating things and doing things instead of buying things? I used to know people, they would spend all their time buying convenience. And then they would sit around with nothing to do with all these conveniences around them, staring into the TV because they've run out of things to do. And I think about the Native Americans, how there was always something to do because there's always things that need to be adjusted or groomed or fixed. Or we don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world now where people are trying to get so much convenience that they run out of things to do. So, yes, we need to come together and turn the tables, Rhonda. And it's a spirit. It's the spirit of the choices and decisions you make. You don't have to lift a finger. You don't have to go to a rally or a protest. It's not about that. You just start living your life a different way. We are the ones feeding the beast. All right, you guys. I love all of you. God impressed upon me last night. I always have these revelations that come to me. When we get off the stream, I want each of you to pray for his kingdom to come. Now, I know that's part of the Lord's Prayer, but I want you to pray for his kingdom to come. And I want it to be a real prayer. And I'm going to do the same thing. After I get off this stream, I'm going to get on my knees. And I haven't done that in a while. Usually I just talk to God, but today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to get on my knees by myself. The Bible tells us how to pray. You're supposed to go away or go into a dark closet, or there's different translations of how Jesus told us to pray. But you're not supposed to be praying on street corners. And that's why we don't do prayers here on one of the biggest street corners in the mornings, which is our live show. So, I want you guys, when we get off the stream, to just all say a prayer. God, please let your kingdom come sooner than later. Let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. If you want to say the whole Lord's Prayer, you can do that. But I'm asking you to do that. I think maybe if we all pray for his kingdom to come, if we all do it together, maybe something will happen. Maybe we're not doing that enough. Maybe we don't have enough solidarity. Maybe we all need to talk about specific things to pray for at the end of some of our shows and then see if it has an impact. I mean, there are 800 of us here. And guess what? Usually these live shows reach about 15, 20,000 people on a good day. So if we could have 20,000 prayers, or at least half the people praying, maybe this will make a difference. God hears our prayers, especially if it's the Lord's Prayer, because that's the prayer we're told to pray. And so we're going to do that. We are going to do that. I'm going to end the show now. I'm going to get on my knees and I'm going to pray for his kingdom to come. Have a great day, everybody.